In today's video, we're taking a look at the latest trade talk around the NHL. We're looking at teams like the Montreal Canadiens and the Columbus Blue Jackets. We also have the latest rumors around a potential extension with the Flames and Noah Hanifin. The future of Patrick Kane. Is the NHL going to change the format of the draft, go with a decentralized version like the NFL? Plus, we also have an update on Rasmus Andersson appealing his suspension. Are the Oilers in deep trouble due to a McDavid injury? We'll discuss all the latest news coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot of news to cover today. Before we jump into it, though, I just want to let you know that this season, our main partner and affiliate for Top Shelf Hockey, main sponsorship program we're running, is through the NHL Shop. Obviously, NHL Shop.ca and Canada.com for U.S. customers. A great spot to get all your NHL gear. Currently, today, there's a special on their website for 25% off. I know on the Canadian site, you can use promo code NHLDEAL, NHLDEAL, the NHLshop.com for U.S. customers. Also has a 25% off special running here today with a different code. So that'll be on the site as soon as you click on the link. Both the Canadian and American links are down below in the pinned comment. So certainly any purchase you're considering doing will help support our channel here and certainly build the sponsorship program with NHL Shop. So it's greatly appreciated if you want to consider making a purchase through our link. Now on to today's news. We saw some milestones take place last night on the Los Angeles Kings against in their game against the Boston Bruins. Longtime NHL captain for the Kings, Anze Kopitar, became the NHL franchise's all-time leading games played leader. So Anze Kopitar hits 1,297 games played last night, taking over the Kings record, which I believe was previously held by former teammate Dustin Brown, if I'm not mistaken. Kopitar has had quite a long career with LA, very productive, one of the greatest players in Kings franchise history, I think that's fair to say. And his teammate Drew Doughty actually also hit a pretty important milestone last night, playing in game number 1100. So a couple of big milestones out in Los Angeles last night. The game between the Edmonton Oilers and the Winnipeg Jets did not end well for the Oilers. Not only did they lose in overtime, but it looks like Connor McDavid is injured, and it didn't look good. It's hard to say exactly what's going on. We haven't heard an official update from the Oilers. However, with about 3 or 4 minutes to go, I think it was about 4 minutes left in the third period, McDavid went off, and he looked like he was, I don't know, something was bothering him. You could tell he was kind of holding his side, lower back area type area, and there's some people who, because there was a clip of him talking to the staff on the bench, and when there's a zoomed in clip, that some people, by reading his lips, think he said, "I tore something." Now that might not be exact. I know I've seen the clip. He might have said that. It's hard to say with absolute certainty those were his words. But the fact that he did not play the last 3 or 4 minutes of the third period and he didn't come out for overtime, he was on the bench talking to the trainers and stuff, but he never played. And that would have been an extra point that would have been quite valuable for them. So I know he would have went if he was able to. So that's not good news. The Oilers have already been slow out of the gate here. One thing we've seen about the Oilers, that there's been a few games where they had goaltending issues. There's been a few times defense has been a problem. There's been a couple times where they just couldn't score, which is an issue that we never thought we'd see. So if McDavid's out, Leon Draisaitl will definitely up his game for sure. But there's going to be lots of other supporting cast there that they need to, come together as a team. There's no reason why the Oilers can't still do relatively well without McDavid. Yes, he's a huge piece of the puzzle there, but I mean, they have a lot of other talented players. So, obviously Connor Brown can step up. He hasn't done a lot since his return to the NHL this year. You've got Zach Hyman, Nugent Hopkins, Leon Draisaitl. Evander Kane hasn't done a lot this year, and I know Kane made some questionable remarks at head coach Jay Woodcroft during the intermission after he had a fight, because he talked to Scott Oak of Sportsnet and said essentially he wasn't playing much, he said, so he thought he'd get into a fight and get some, get on the score sheet and get off the bench for a while. So, it's, taking stabs at your head coach isn't great. I mean, obviously, I don't know. I just hope that they're not running into any issues there internally, but the McDavid injury could be a big blow for them, for a team that's already been coming into the season with high expectations, and a very poor start is not good at all. A couple other things as well from that we learned over the last 24 hours here is Rasmus Andersson, the Calgary Flames defenseman, of course, yesterday was handed a 4-game suspension. We knew he was likely getting suspended after player safety had announced they were having a hearing, and they gave him 4 games. That's the longest suspension we've seen in quite some time. I don't think anybody questioned whether or not he was going to be suspended. I think everybody would agree with it. It was a dirty hit, there's no doubt. And it was unnecessary, uncalled for, final minute of play. It's definitely like sending a message type of hit that really shouldn't have happened. But I think the main reason they're appealing is the fact that it's, there's not really, like I said, it's the longest one in a while. And if you take a look at other cases where they've handed out 2 or 3 games or what have you, I think they have a case to get it reduced. Now, for him to get it reduced, they have to basically go before Commissioner Gary Bettman. And if Bettman says, no, I'm not reducing it, I agree with the ruling by player safety, then they go to an independent arbitrator. But the problem is those take time. And at the end of the day, they may not get this heard, especially if it doesn't reach, if Bettman doesn't do anything, before he misses the games necessary. He's already missing the first game today. They're playing Detroit, and Detroit's continuing to be on fire here this season. The Brinkett and Larkin are just unstoppable right now. So there's going to be 1 game already missed for Andersson. So I don't know how that's going to work out, but they are appealing it through the NHLPA. The Flames certainly have us back, and I was seeing an interview with the first intermission with Craig Conroy, the GM of the Flames, and they said they have he has their full support as well. So we'll see if it gets reduced. At most, maybe 1 game, maybe down to 3. It's going to be, I thought it would be 2 to 3. They get 4. It was more than I thought it would be. I mean, it was a nasty, dirty hit. Shouldn't have done it. It's definitely suspension, but I guess a lot of people were surprised on the severity of it, given what else we've seen from them. But my biggest complaint about player safety is the lack of consistency. So, again, a lot of people feeling the same sort of concept there. Seattle Kraken forward Andre Burakovsky left last night's game from the Kraken's bench and did not return, so that could be an injury to watch for Seattle. Of course, the Kraken had a bit of a slow start, so obviously if they want to have a chance to kind of go on a run and turn things around, that's certainly not going to help. He's been a good player for them. Former NHLer Tyler Ennis is going to be continuing his pro hockey career outside of the NHL. He was looking for an NHL return this year. It never happened, never came to be. He was waiting around before he went back to Europe, because he did play in Europe last year, but he's now signed in Germany to play in the DEL for Adler Mannheim. So that's where he'll be spending his season. According to Chris Johnson, NHL insider, Zach Parise, former New York Islander, Minnesota Wild, New Jersey Devil, is not done in the NHL. Now, didn't really specify for sure if he'd be returning to the Islanders, but I do know that Lou Lamoriello, when he was asked about Parise during the, I guess it would have been preseason or beginning of this NHL season, he said, I think it was back in training camp actually, he said that Parise wasn't signed, but he never said, he's like, he's not retired, it's not completely, like the door's not closed. So this isn't shocking news in that sense. We didn't really think that he was done per se, but according to CJ, he has been skating, working on his conditioning with the hopes of signing sometime soon. So will that be with the Islanders to return where he's played? He's basically, kind of been one of those guys that have been playing for Lou on cheap deals, trying to help the Islanders win here the last couple of years. He actually had a pretty good year last year, given his age and what everybody expected from him. He certainly exceeded expectations on the value of the contract and what he was going to be producing. So we'll see where Parise lands, if it's back with the Islanders or somewhere else. But we should hear something more on that in the near future. There's also, according to Elliot Friedman, optimism and hope that the Calgary Flames and Noah Hanifin will actually end up coming to terms on an extension and keeping him in Calgary. Of course, going into the offseason, Hanifin was one of the main ones. Him and Tyler Toffoli were basically made it clear that they likely were not re-signing. Toffoli even said, I'm definitely not re-signing. I'd probably prefer a trade. They shipped him out pretty quickly to get a decent deal with the Devils. But then Hanifin was the one that all the NHL insiders said he's told the Flames he's not interested in re-signing, so he's either going to be moved or he'll play the season out and leave via UFA next summer. But why would they do that, right? Craig Conroy made it clear that the Calgary Flames can't afford to lose assets for nothing. They need to stock the cupboards for the future. So if these guys don't want to stick around, they need to get something in return. He didn't really want to go into the season with a bunch of pending UFAs. Really, he got Toffoli traded. He signed Backlund. But the rest of there's more outstanding than he probably would have liked. But, the fact is that they, couldn't come to terms. Like, you can only try so hard, right? At the end of the day, they don't really want to move all these guys. They still have Chris Tanev as well, another defenseman to make a decision on. But according to Elliott on last night's Saturday Headline segment on Hockey Night in Canada, he said that there was progress on an extension. So there's optimism that he could sign a longer-term extension. But again, like they always say, until it's done, it's not done. And it's just because there's been progress made doesn't mean they won't hit a snag, doesn't mean there won't be a change of heart. But clearly, due to the coaching change, personnel change, Hanifin was certainly open to the idea of staying, which obviously I think the team is quite pleased about. Now it's just a matter of hammering out the contract, and if they're making progress, you would think the odds of them getting it done are probably pretty good. Now, the other UFA we're watching here as well is Patrick Kane. Another, according to a Sportsnet article I was reading today, another team to watch, which we haven't talked about too much, is the Dallas Stars. The Dallas Stars are obviously one of the contending teams in the Western Conference. Not going to have any easy task getting through teams like Vegas and Colorado, but they certainly have a great goaltender, Jake Ottinger. They have lots of great defensemen and good forward group. They are, one of the probably top 3 or 4 teams in the West that you would think would have the best chance of reaching the Stanley Cup final and possibly playing or winning a Stanley Cup. So Dallas is in the mix, there's no doubt. And obviously, Patrick Kane sounds like he wants to play for a winner. Obviously, I think it's important to him to have a chance to win. Obviously, it's important to him to have a spot where he can be successful as well and be a key contributor. So it kind of boils down to that. So obviously Dallas, I do understand the article. I agree with it. Dallas would be a great spot. I do think we need to watch that. But one of the couple other teams that I think we need to continue watching, one's the Rangers because of the connection from last year. Although I do think that's less likely he goes there. That's just my personal take. There's always his hometown Sabres. So far, they haven't had a great start to the year, so I think that'll be a factor. And then there's Detroit, which have been mentioned. Possible reunion with DeBrincat, and they are off to a flying start. So, Larkin and DeBrincat are an unstoppable duo right now. Can you imagine adding Patrick Kane on the other side? That would be a lethal triple threat coming down at you offensively. So, we'll see where Kane ends up. Like I said, it's probably going to be a few more weeks before we know for sure, but Dallas is another team that's been mentioned as a team to watch. So, we'll have to see where that goes. And as we mentioned before in the last couple of days, there's been some talk about the NHL considering decentralizing the NHL draft and completely changing the format, which would also, change the experience for the prospects that are being drafted. Could possibly change the experience for the fans. There's a lot that could be done here, and a whole, changing everything, right? The rationale behind it is there's obviously some teams that want to see them be able to keep more of their staff at home and prepare for free agency and the other parts that are key to the off season, because it's also close together. You're taking all your staff into one of the NHL cities for the draft, and then within a couple of days you're getting ready for free agency. And I think there's just a bit of an appetite to kind of maybe try something different and keep more of the staff at home. Now, of course, if you look at some of the other sports, like an NFL style draft, typically they only have your first round quality prospects. They're ones that are expected to go would be the only players probably in the building. And there would be representatives from each team, but not a whole lot. I don't know. I know Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick had mentioned on their latest podcast that came out at the end of the week that maybe you turn this into a whole different event. If you're going to change the format of the draft, maybe you almost turn it into more of a hockey trade show almost. You could partner with other leagues, even like the CHL and the AHL, and you have maybe there's like the equipment producers there, and you can bring in some of the NHL alumni. You can make it into like a fanfare type of event. That way, there's still a good experience for the fan base. It's hard to say what they do now. From what we do know, from what Elliotte Friedman was reporting, is that the NHL has sent out the concept to all the teams, and they wanted all the teams to send one vote per organization back to head office by Tuesday. So I'm not sure how quickly the insiders will dig up the dirt and find out what the general feeling seems to be. There was definitely an appetite for change, but will it be enough? I know online, looking at social media, the overwhelming feeling seems to be don't change it. I know a lot of the media is saying don't change it, but will they listen to those people? You got to remember, too, when it comes to social media, especially like Twitter or X, I guess it's called. I know I'm on the app a lot, but obviously I still call it Twitter. I can't seem to get in the hang of calling it X. It seems weird, but between like people in North America, there's only about 25% of the population that even use the app. So, you can't take it for everything because that's a smaller piece of the population that you're really talking to, right? But the overwhelming feeling on there has been like hardcore, don't change it. It's great the way it is. Now, I understand maybe there's some appetite to change the NHL schedule a little bit so that there's more of a gap between the draft and free agency. That could help. You'd probably have to start the season a little bit earlier so that it ends a little bit earlier. Maybe that way you could have the draft instead of late June, maybe it's closer to the middle of June. The problem is, though, is they don't really want to compete any more than they have to with the NFL for TV. Obviously, the NFL is massive in the United States, biggest sport going, and it's a tough market to compete with. So they're trying to, have a different enough schedule so that they can not compete with them as much as possible. And pushing the schedule back like that would cause more competition with the NFL, which is probably not going to help because there's already, as you know, we've probably seen headlines about NHL attendance numbers not great in a bunch of different markets to start the season. I don't know if you can't blame the NFL for all of that by any means, but there's different reasons and different markets. But hard to say what happens, but we should have more on this story in the next few days. Be curious what the NHL does. Personally, I like to see them leave it the same. But I don't think that it's going to be more about the fans. I think it's going to be more about what the teams want more than anything else. So we'll see. As far as some trade talk goes, obviously we had some rumors regarding some UFAs and contract extensions, but one team to watch as well is Columbus. We've been talking about them for a while about moving a defenseman. It seems like now it's kind of emerged that the more likely candidate there is Andrew Peeke. At one point I thought maybe it was more likely Adam Boqvist, but now Peake's only played one game. They've had some injuries back there. They've had some guys going in and out. It looks like Jake Bean seems to have solidified a spot. Boqvist has been in more than Peeke, so I either they're trying to showcase Boqvist more, or Peeke is just the odd man out and the preferred player to move. Now, we know they've been one of the teams linked to Connor Garland in Vancouver. I don't know if Peeke would be a type of defenseman that would be intriguing to them for potential return, because that is the preferred return, according to NHL insiders right now, is that the Canucks are willing to retain a little bit of money on Garland, move him out for ideally a defenseman, and they'd like to come ahead on a cap space by at least $1 million or more. So that could possibly work, because Peeke doesn't have a big contract, but I know there's other teams in the mix there as well. But he seems to be kind of becoming the odd man out there, so we'll have to watch that. And in Montreal, they've recalled winger UL Armia. There's no secret that Montreal would like to move on from the veteran forward. They put him through waivers earlier towards the end of training camp, sent him to the minors. He's played a handful of games there, and now they've recalled him, trying to give him a showcase for a chance to kind of hopefully play well and get the attention of other NHL teams. But problem is on his contract it's still a little much for teams to take on. Obviously, they could retain some money, which is definitely, I would think, going to be necessary. But we'll see what Montreal does. They have a number of players that could be moved out by the deadline. Certainly, they've had a decent start to the season. Cole Caulfield is having a great, get another overtime winner there on Saturday night, which seems to be his forte. But, not just Armia that we're watching. By the end of the year, be curious to see what they do with Sean Monahan. Dvorak should be back soon. He's another one to watch as well. And they're kind of probably your main three that kind of come to mind right now that they would prefer to move first. There could be some other deals in the mix there as well. But with Armia now, recalled, be curious to see where they deploy him in the lineup and how successful he can be to try to get some attention. But going to be challenging to do for sure, given that contract. But let me know your thoughts on all today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.